The Michael Hough, painted by others, is an academic, a father, an intellect, and a maverick landscape architect, though maverick is a word that has been much debated this past week. He stood up for our planet. To me, however, he was just Grandpa. That is not to say that I had no idea of his talent or intelligence. I just had no idea that so many people outside of the family also realized that. Growing up, Grandpa read me almost all of the Dr. Dolittle books, The Wizard of Oz, and Alice in Wonderland. He passed on a love of reading, art, the environment, and music, passions of which almost every Hough has acquired at least one. Largely due to him, we are strong-minded individuals who enjoy time alone, which is the polite way of saying that we are very stubborn sometimes and all live very far from one another. As a granddaughter, I heard stories of a silent rage that I never experienced, but from time to time I have felt it myself, especially when hearing Stephen Harperites toe the party line regarding environmental catastrophes waiting to happen. Politics aside, the Michael Hough I knew was a grandfather who loved his grandchildren so much that he wanted to provide a sustainable planet, one all of which would inherit. On the night of his death, Anita, my grandmother, and I were all around his bedside, and I can't remember how we got on the topic, but we were discussing the afterlife. For those of you who knew my grandfather, you knew him as a sort of an agnostic or an atheist, more so than a Christian, but anyway, in a moment of philosophical thinking, I said that I believe the afterlife is the legacy you leave behind when you die. Sitting here today, I don't think words could be more true when it comes to my grandpa. The legacy he left behind is instilled in all of us, not just his children, but his grandchildren and the children and grandchildren of others, because the beliefs he held about a sustainable earth and the beliefs he held about music, art, love, they are handed down to all of us to carry on. Thank you.
Now, Michael's granddaughter Rose is going to come and sing a song which she composed really on the occasion of her grandfather's death. Thank you, Rose.
All this emotion. I'll be okay in another day. Didn't get to say goodbye. Now everyone seen me cry.
going to invite Tim forward now.
I'm Tim. My father was a mentor to me, myself, and my siblings. He was a professor, artist, musician, atheist, agnostic. He was always encouraging me to pursue my art and kept most of my old drawings dating back to when I was 3 years old. He was very supportive of me and helped to instill confidence in my abilities. We had nicknames. My brother was Fluffkin, I was Tim Tum, and our tiny tuna Tim. Mom was known as Tweedles, my sister Fifi, and his sister Anne was Squeaky. He taught me all about ecology, natural history, evolution, Darwinism. From an early age, I was hooked. He could name all the various trees and shrubs, wildflowers and mosses. We would go on long walks together, looking for birds and other wildlife. He was an avid birder and took me on nature walks in various places, especially the ravines near our home. He was an eco-warrior and instilled in us a great respect for the natural world and the environment. He was the proverbial absent-minded professor. He was a workaholic, often continuing to work on books and papers and projects on weekends or on trips to our retreat at Bear Lake. He was an eyewitness to history. My grandfather was a British diplomat, and both my father and my aunt were in Prague when Hitler invaded. Anne and Michael were both children in 1938 when Hitler's army marched in goose-step fashion through the streets of Prague. Dad would have been 9 years old. He and his sister Anne, upon hearing the news of Hitler's invading forces, ran to the top floor of the building to shoot Hitler with their bows and arrows from the windows overlooking the street. His idol was Frank Lloyd Wright, and in 1953, while a student in Edinburgh, he wrote a letter to him telling him that he was a student of architecture and a great admirer of his and would like the opportunity to meet him. He had planned to take the long journey to America and to spend the summer with friends in California. Frank Lloyd Wright wrote back and agreed to meet him. On the long bus trip from New York City to San Francisco to see friends, he made a detour to Wisconsin to see his idol. He was ushered in by Mr. Wright at his home in Taliesin. He was a man of great integrity. I remember when Molson Brewery made an offer to the Ontario government to buy out the Ontario Place Forum and to build in its place that corporate monstrosity known as the Molson Amphitheatre. He and the architect Eberhard Zeidler were both livid and attempted to block the deal. They were threatened with a lawsuit from Molson's. That put an end to the forum. It was a rude awakening to the new corporate paradigm. He was stubborn and single-minded and always needed to keep busy, even when it became impossible for him to do so. Dad, we miss you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to invite Fiona now to come forward.
It might take me a minute to just get ready. I actually didn't really plan anything specifically for this, but a few years ago, just as my dad, most of you know that my dad had Alzheimer's and was quite ill the last few years, and about 3 years ago at Christmas, I decided to write him something to give him a gift for Christmas that was homemade in honor of the gifts that he had given me. We'll put this out there. It's called The Gifts of Bear Lake. It's many of you who are family friends will know the cottage. And I've ended up in a field of work that is actually takes me out of the city, which makes me happy. And though my dad was very connected to
Toronto, I'm quite connected to the wild places, but I attribute that to the way that I was brought up. Anyway, so I wrote him this thing, and it was just about the gifts that I felt he had given me through the time in the wilderness that we spent together. And I just thought I'd add to, I think someone was talking about the mice in the cottage. I think that was Simon. And I wrote a little note because I remembered I spent a few weeks by myself one year at the cottage in the winter, and a mink, an ermine, actually ran across the floor of the cottage. And it just made me think, yes, a complete ecosystem. Yes. Hopefully the ermine was killing off the mouse population. So I'm just going to read from this. It's quite brief. So there's 3 sections. Awareness and recognition. You and this place taught me the importance of paying attention, being aware to what is around me, noticing, listening, seeing, smelling, looking down as well as up. Birds, brush wolves, abandoned fox kits, audacious chipmunks, nesting herons, deer mice, and passing moose became integral to my experience of community as both human and non. Making and moving. As a girl, I was invited to make things out of wood, chop firewood, haul water, build and light fires, cook on a wood stove, snowshoe and ski through deep snow on made-up trails, paddle a canoe. All these things started for me in this place and have become central to my life's path. The last one is about getting lost. If anyone who's read Richard Loeb's work, I feel like my dad was a real predecessor, not just in his work, but in the way he brought me up and the way he kind of lived our life as a family. So it's about getting lost. Growing up with the explicit permission to wander, get lost, and explore without boundaries or safety nets. The secret private wanders around the property and freedom to explore was a gift. How to get lost in the woods and eventually find myself again has been a life lesson, one that I have learnt, taught, and relearned. Thank you.
I'll invite Adrienne forward now.
So I'm the actor in the family, and I'm the one who's about to make a dog's breakfast of this, so. Sorry, Dad. I found it really difficult to do this, to write, and so I try to do everything at once. And so I'm just going to read the various pieces that I came up with this week, which I tried to mash all together at 3:45 this morning. Can a man be both fierce and shy, awkward but eloquent, distant but intimate? That was my father to me. As a teenager, he was infuriating to me. I remember watching him on television once. He was trying to speak about something to do with design, the waterfront in his work, and it drove me mad because he spoke so quietly and fumbly and mumbly and had a twitch to do with about something he felt so powerfully about. And I knew it was important. And yet here I am at a loss for words. On Thursday last week, I woke up and I found how there was a text from my mom. And it said, "Come now." So I threw all the clothes I could think of into a suitcase, called the airline, and there I was, and I got to his bedside at about 10:15. And the machine puffed in a two-tone harmony of oxygen through his nose. I watched, transfixed by the miracle of pulse in his neck, the life still coursing through the muscles and skin of his hand. I gazed at that hand, held it in mine for a long time. He forced breath moment to moment. And at around 3 o'clock that night, the breathing slowed down, and my daughter Sophie and my mother were having a rest in the other room. And I called him in. I said, maybe you should come. And then his breathing gradually stopped. And that was at 4:15 in the morning on Friday. And he was peaceful. Man who was never peaceful, as you've heard, he was peaceful. So I've been trying to piece together a life for the past week, a life that in many ways I did not understand, but has made me and my brothers and sisters and even my children who we are. How could childhoods, one generation to the next, be so vastly different? For all the things you can say about my father's accomplishments, the inner workings of the man were a mystery to me, revealed only in his nature, or to my mother, Bridget. He kept to himself the horrors of his past. He internalized them, which I believe eventually became the fuel to fulfill, and he did fulfill, his mission. From the cruelty of the British nanny he had as a very young boy, the son of a traveling diplomat, then being sent off to a British public school where public and private beatings were encouraged as a form of discipline, where prefects, older boys, were made part of a vicious system of control, institutionalized violence against young, lonely boys. His relief from this was the nature that was around, and he got into bird watching and painting and music. When he finally did see his parents again, it was 4 years later because of the war and distance, and the Mediterranean was cut off and his father was in Palestine. At 19, since he was a British public school boy with the right accent and education, he was selected to be an officer and chose the Foreign Service, I suppose in the hopes that he'd get to see the world, but which meant defending British interests in Malay, which essentially was being in charge of a group of hardened soldiers guarding a rubber plantation, never being able to tell if someone coming out of the jungle was a friend or foe. He could not and would not give the order to shoot, because by this time he was a declared pacifist. His work as a landscape architect has also been spoken of wonderfully. Thank you today. And thank you for telling the driving story, because I can cut that out. I remember a poster on the wall of his study. It's one of the things which is just in the back of my, always there in my mind. If you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. My dad's true wisdom was that he knew the truly subversive and ultimately healing thing he could do for the world was to make sure that they would be exposed wherever they were, even in a city, to those disobedient, revolutionary, subversive trees and bushes and natural systems that invade our comfortable sense of control and our environment, that nature would have her way. And it was indeed that contact with nature that teaches us who we are. I learned from him who he was, that we are not separate from nature. He took us out of the city, my family and I. Let nature teach us. At camping or the cottage, we got to see stars, uninterrupted by city lights, lakes, rivers, animals, and yes, bugs and mice. Hear the loud stillness of nature, so clear in its voices. Clean air that cut through our breath and infused our beings. And in those moments, nature taught us, connected us to what was real, whole, and meaningful. As you've heard, my brother and sister and I all have versions of that experience and carry it with us to this day. Tim, in his masterful, detailed artwork which always blows my mind. Fiona in her work with youth in Outward Bound and frequent canoe trips, and me in my outspokenness and activism resisting poisonous pipelines across the last pristine land on this planet and to oil megatankers off the coast of BC where I currently live. Here's where I get a little loopy, I think. On another level, beyond our ideas of spirit, of nature, of being, many quadrillions of atoms that were once part of my father while he was alive are now perhaps part of this church, or an eagle flying by my house in Nanaimo, or of an 800-year-old tree in one of the few last stands of old-growth forest on the planet, or of an ocean wave blending into the next ocean wave, of you, of me. He was not a religious man. Religion to him meant cruelty and forcible control, but if there was a spirituality to him, and intrinsically I believe that there was, it came to him from nature, and he saw how we were all connected. Quiet, stubborn, brilliant, gentle, private, raging, revolutionary, distant away in his study. But later on, he became very openly loving in his later years, and when those eyes twinkled at you, there was no mistaking it. If he was here today, I believe he would encourage you to love this planet, fight for it, resist quietly, loudly, passionately, and intelligently the continuing destruction of it. One thing above all, he understood: we are part of this planet. Natural systems need to influence us, and he dedicated his life to bringing them into the city. So I ask you to spend some time this week with a tree by the lake shore, at the brickworks. Let it in. Become part of the solution in any way you can. And I'm just going to read a poem, which was actually the first thing my mom asked me to do, and that was all I was going to do. It's a Dylan Thomas poem, and I think it captures my father's fierce energy and desire to live. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rage at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
As all these memories and recollections and insights reverberate in our ears and join in this space, let us join our hearts in prayer. Holy Mystery, source of being, Our hearts are grateful for all the blessings of life and for all the ways in which we come to know this earth. We give thanks for those who share our lives, for families and loved ones, for colleagues and companions, for caregivers and neighbors and friends. Especially today, we give thanks and we remember Michael with praise and gratitude, a bright spark in a vast cosmos and a valiant spirit, beloved husband and father and grandfather, a brother and friend, a teacher and mentor, landscape architect, an environmentalist, author, artist, and musician, gentle revolutionary. We celebrate the gifts of Michael's life and give thanks for all in him that was witty and curious, fierce and shy, creative and crusty. We give thanks for his tremendous talents, for his enthusiasm, his single-mindedness, and his vision. We give thanks for the love he gave and received, for the persistence of his spirit through decline, and for all that lives on through those who knew and loved him. We give thanks that for Michael, death itself was gentle, and that he rests in peace. Spirit of compassion, we hold in our hearts the family and friends of Michael, and for all who feel sorrow at his passing. We remember especially at this time and surround with care his wife Bridget, his children Timothy and Adrian and Fiona, his grandchildren Sophie, Rose, and Will. May they be comforted in their sorrow. May their hearts be lightened by the love they have for one another and the memories they share. May this painful time of grief also be a holy time of forgiveness and healing. We remember also Michael's larger family and his family of friends. We remember every part of the web of relationships in which Michael lived his life. And may each one be reminded through the care and support of others that we are not alone. May we be wise and gentle as we seek to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to those for whom this loss is most poignant. As we say goodbye, we share our hope that nothing good in the life of this man, Michael, will be lost, but will be of benefit to the world. That all that was important to him will be respected by those who follow, and that everything he valued will continue to mean much to us now that he has died. We pray that he may live on in the hearts and minds of family and friends, inspiring courage, informing conscience. Michael, as you go forth from this world, may the Spirit of love bless and keep you. May the light of eternity shine on you and be gracious to you. May the cosmos enfold you with kindness and give you peace. Amen. now into the world with a daring and a tender heart. Go in peace. The world is waiting. And whatever you do, do it for love, remembering that you are not alone. Amen.